Good morning, tribe, and welcome back to Mapping the Mysteries. Third tumbler of coffee this morning, so let's talk Bigfoot. So this episode, we are doing Mapping the Mystery. And let me read you this one, and let's dive into this. This one really sticks out because he says, at this point, all I remember is hitting the lock button on the truck door and screaming. So this got to be interesting. This time we are delving into Berry County, Missouri. Last episode we did Stone County. We're in Berry County now. Berry County is just to the east of Stone County. Might have a little bit of lake access, but of course all kinds of creeks. Rural county, and has a lot of dense forest and probably conservation area, public area, that kind of thing. So here we go. Let's talk about this episode. This encounter happened in the year 2004. It was fall, and he gives a date. It's November the 18th. This man has his details down. The nearest town is Purdy and Highway C. So he says at approximately 6:45 p.m., he was traveling south on a winding dirt road less than 5 miles from his home on C Highway between McDonald and East Purdy, Missouri. He said as he drove along, he noticed an animal on the side of the road. He wasn't real concerned about this because there was a local mule that got out and would be out on the road and on the sides of the road. So that wasn't uncommon. But he did slow down considerably because, he doesn't want to hit the mule. And as he got up to what he thought was said mule, this thing stood up. And he said, as he got closer to it, it stood up and it was facing his Explorer. So he's driving a smaller pickup truck. It's not a full-size pickup truck, I don't think. Or is that a Ranger? Anyway, instead of moving into the headlight beam like deer will do, he said it came at an angle out of the ditch. And it came toward the passenger side of his truck. He estimated it to be as tall as he was, which was 5'8". But okay, so and when I think about it, or Explorer is probably a full-size truck. I know cars, but it's muscle cars. And it's covered in hair. And this one, he says it's buff colored or light colored. And that's not your typical, the gray and the light colored one like that is not, that's not the norm. The norm's usually brown, black, or even the auburn, the red brown. So this is highly, highly different. So he says, all I really remember at this point is hitting the lock button on the truck door and screaming. It came up to the passenger side window, and he said all he could see was its chest. So I'm wondering if it wasn't a little bigger than what he thinks it was, especially if his pickup was a full-size truck. He said if he saw the face, he didn't recall. He just recalled the chest being in the window. He was screaming and hit the accelerator and sped away as fast as he could. He said, I didn't know what it was, and the only that I have never seen anything like that before in my life. But it does make me wonder about the events that happened around our house in the past. In the spring of that year, his dog started going crazy, barking, and he would step onto the porch to see what was going on and would hear a scream that he took to be a mountain lion. And I'm going to take a minute here and talk about that. Because I have heard so many people talk about mountain lion screams. Well, if you will just go online, mountain lions, yes, they scream, but their lung capacity is not that. You're not going to hear them from long distances away. If you do, it's going to be very lightly. And that reminds me, of my father worked on the river, and he was a river guide part of the time. It was just something extra he did. And my mother would tell me, that they would come home and talk about hearing mountain lions screaming up and down the river. And, for the longest time, never put two and two together. And as I got into Bigfoot, I would ask her, because she lived in Stone County most of her life. And I would say, didn't you ever hear weird stories? No, just about the mountain lions screaming up and down the river. I don't think they were mountain lions all the time. I'm not going to say that that didn't happen, but I think more of the time than not, it was Bigfoot. Just my opinion, people. Just my opinion. But let's see. Let's go back to this gentleman's report. Heard a scream. Took it to be a mountain lion. Knowing that I had a dog in the back pasture, I went to the truck and went to the back to let her in to the main pasture with the other dogs. I noticed on the way down to the back pasture that the very large dog had all my goats in a tight knot by the small barn, and the dogs were in a semicircle around the goats. When I got to the back to let the other dog in, I noticed that there was no sound at all from the woods nearby. My dogs were silent. The dog that I went down to get was terrified and rushed through the open gate as soon as I opened it, and went back to the house and went to bed. Oh, the gentleman went back to the house and went to the bed. The next day, the neighbor told him that his dogs had fought something behind the house at about 3 a.m. He didn't know what it was, only that it was large. Now, that's not uncommon when you live out in the country. A lot of people have outside dogs that, guard the goats, the sheep, whatever you've got, the chicken house, that's not uncommon. And to hear your dogs fighting, that's not uncommon either, because if they're good dogs, they're going to keep stuff out. When he checked the dogs out, they did not have slash cuts that they would have had if they had tangled with a mountain lion. There were just scrapes, but that was about it. So this gentleman doesn't think that they were fighting a mountain lion. Our fence in the back of the place was all pushed down. Our fence consists of cattle panels that are 52 inches tall. They are hooked to the post with heavy wire, and I cannot bend the ties with my bare hands. At the place where the fence was pushed down, the panel was loose from the post and the clips were in the brush. All the time, I thought it odd, as a mountain lion wouldn't have been capable of doing this. A bear could, but not a cougar. So for all of you that don't know what he's talking about, these panels are very heavy, welded together paneling that you can take and make, a small enclosure out of large enclosure. Most of the time they're wired to T-posts. So they're heavy. They're heavy to pick up and move, and let alone to tear down when they've been wired to one of those. This gentleman is the only one that had this encounter. He says he got the nerve up to tell the mother of his son's friend about what had happened. She then related that her husband had seen almost the same creature, only taller and bigger, not a mile from the home on C Highway. He was traveling the road on a motorcycle and noticed an awful odor. He then saw it and said that it stepped over the fence with no effort and crossed the road in 2 strides. He can better describe the face and eyes. This is a rural area, farm community. And, these people don't make things up like that because they don't want everybody to think they're crazy. So that's a very interesting, the color on that. So I wonder if that's a family over there. So let's move on to the next one that we have in Berry County. And let's see here. This one is going to be in 2008, and it was in July. We're still in Berry County, Cape Fair, which is not far from where we were at in Stone County a while ago. This gentleman says, I'm always doing outdoor activities, floating, camping, hiking, and recently had some strange encounters. He says, first, he likes to go to the conservation areas frequently, and at Wire Road Conservation Area off of Grisham Ford Road in Crane. He said, I was there with a friend, and it was just after sunset when something would throw very large rocks into the creek. That's all it consisted of, was splashing in the creek. It sounds like bowling ball-sized rocks being thrown into the water, making not only the splash, but that kerplunk noise. So that's the difference between a splash and a kerplunk. The kerplunk is something being thrown into the water or something jumping into the water. And we have had this happen on expeditions. And the resident skeptic, my husband, has had that happen to him. So that makes a difference when they tell you about the kerplunk and not just a splash. Made me and my friend wonder what was making the noise. We were very open-minded about what it could be. And it happened on multiple occasions, all shortly after sunset, with no one else, when no one else was in the conservation area. We told several people about this, and of course, everyone would tell us it was just ducks. But like I said, objects in the water were very large, making the kerplunk noise like a cannonball being thrown in. Just as we finally had given up on the search for the cause of the splashing, months had gone by, and me and the same friend had went on a float trip. It happened to be the 4th of July in 2008. We planned a float trip in his canoe. They were on Flat Creek from Jenkins Bridge all the way to the low water bridge on Flat Creek Road. He says that's a very long float. The float started about midday, and about halfway through the float, it was very dark and cloudy, so no moonlight. Okay, so they're floating into the evening. It was just pitch dark on the creek, and at a slow, deep section of the creek, we were just quietly floating along, not talking, when it seemed like we startled something very large about 20 feet away. It was just standing at the edge of the creek when we startled it. So it stepped out of the creek. You could hear one leg pull out of the water, followed by one more, and it displaced a lot of water, making waves. It made a couple more steps up on the land into a very forested area. Me and my friend were stunned, just remaining dead silent and staring at the area where the noise originated from. Then a very large rock was thrown within 5 feet of the boat, exactly like the occurrence in Crane. Even though we never saw the creature, it was very clear that it was a large bipedal creature because of the very long strides in the deep water. It seemed that we startled it, so it just walked out of sight, not really frightened, then threw a rock to warn us to get away. So he's saying that this is apparently at approximately 10 p.m. It's very dark. There's no moonlight. And they're floating, a creek, stream, whatever you want to call it, with dense forested areas around it. So they're in the boonies, people, and in Missouri, it doesn't take very far for you to get to the boonies. But anyhow, so they have been having rocks thrown at them at an area over multiple times, is what he's saying to start out with, that they're in an area and sounds like they're just hanging out and they're getting rocks thrown at them. Well, that's not unusual. We've had rocks thrown at us multiple times. And usually this is not an aggressive thing. As many times as people talk about the rocks being thrown, I think they can be pretty accurate with them. And if they wanted to hurt you, they would hurt you. This is just, I think a lot of times, it's a couple of different scenarios. They're playing with you, messing with you, whatever you want to call it. Especially when it's the smaller rocks, or they're throwing pine cones or things like that. The bigger rocks in the water, I'm not sure about that, because that seems to happen to fishermen a lot. You hear that? I don't know if they just want you out of there so they can go fish. If it's a form of entertainment, I'm not really sure. But it's very interesting why they do this practice. And we're speculating on everything because we don't know. And this is how we learn, is let's compare these sightings and talk about the things that have happened. Because like I said, we're in Berry County, Missouri, and Berry County is just east of Stone County. Berry County, like I said, is a very rural county, kind of like Stone County for the most part. Not a lot of big towns in either one of them. And I'm just pulling the mapping project up here to see, what they've got also in that area. And it looks like in some of these areas that most of these sightings, they're happening down around the rivers, the creeks, the lakes. There's water again, people, there's been prints found in Berry County. There's been vocalizations heard in Berry County. There's been sightings in Berry County. So you've got all the things. Berry County is, like I said, rural. Don't know how many times I can tell you that. And there are public lands there. There are conservation areas there. All the things you need are right there. And I'm sure the deer population is absolutely ridiculous in this area, kind of like it is in Stone County. So we've got all the makings for perfect Sasquatch habitat. So that's all I have for you all on Berry County this week. Thank you so much for tuning in again. And please let us know if you're liking these episodes. Bye, tribe.